Moving on to our next speaker, I would like to call Ismail to introduce our speaker.
Good afternoon all. Mr. Jyotiranjan is currently the CEO and co-founder of Bolt.Earth, an AI integrated IoT platform designed to make EVs smart, safe and connected. Packed as the Android for EVs, Bolt.Earth enables smart mobility solutions with a comprehensive ecosystem aimed to accelerating EV adoption across emerging markets. His vision is not just about technology, it's about reshaping the future of mobility to be smarter, safer, and more inclusive for all. Jyotiranjan's entrepreneurial journey began with Munchbee Foods, a platform connecting corporate employees with a variety of food providers. His expertise in technology and business has driven Bolter's success in transforming the EV landscape. We will welcome you, sir.
Hi everyone. Thank you for giving me time on a Sunday afternoon. I'm sure Saturday afternoon, and I am sure you had a lot more important things to do. So before I start, I just wanted to kind of ask all of you with a show of hands, how many of you have basically bought a EV over the last few years? How many of you have had discussions with your friends, family, or RWA members, or in your committee to basically implement EV charging stations or something like that? Okay, I think we are reaching somewhere around 10-20% of people who are at least having conversations already, right? So we started this journey around 2017, where we started making software for electric vehicles and also building infrastructure. And at that point of time, unfortunately, India did not have any EV landscape. So we actually were one of the few startups who actually started our business in China. So went to China, we sold software there. We helped build the EV infrastructure for a few of the EV infrastructure companies. We did the WeChat, Alipay integrations till COVID hit us, and we had to come back and start all over again for Indian market, right? So after COVID, we realized that there are a lot of brands, government was pushing for EVs in India also. And we kind of we realized that to get EVs on the road, we had to install infrastructure and make it accessible for everybody. Whether it is a person who's buying a EV directly, or it's an apartment, or it's a builder, or it's an office. That is what we realized while we were working in China. The EV infrastructure has to be present everywhere. The most convenient place to charge your EV, which I'll show you over the basically slide and the presentation, is at your home or at your office, because that is where you spend 80 to 90% of your time, right? So what we envision in the next few years, at least as per the government, should happen is that every parking lot would have infrastructure which will be enabled by us or somebody else to park and charge your EV overnight, just like your smartphone, right? So let me take you through the slides. So first, let me introduce our company and what we have been doing all along. And also why this problem matters right now, and what is it that we have to do right now to fix this in the next coming 2 years to 5 years to 10 years. Because by 2030, what the government is saying is that they want about 80% EV adoption in 2 and 3 wheelers and 30% EV adoption in cars. So that means in all of your parking lots, there will be more cars and more bikes which will be electric vehicle, and they will be charging at the parking lots rather than they will be going and charging at the petrol bunk or something, which is good for the environment. But then we have other side of issues where now all of these people would have to find a charging spot at their own parking lot, because most of us are very lazy, whether we like to admit it or not. We want the most convenient solution, and we want Amazon and Flipkart to deliver goods and items at our home, and we want Swiggy and Zomato to deliver food at your home. And similarly, we also want something which can enable us to basically solve this problem at our home, rather than us going and charging at different public charging points, right? So what is happening across India also, just like everywhere else in the world, that various governments are passing regulations and legislations and also giving guidance on how EV charging is now mandated. Like if you look at Maharashtra or Delhi, which are a lot more forward thinking and also have to deal with the problem of pollution, they are now mandating basically EV charging points in their new office, new buildings, new apartments, without which there is no OC also given to some of these builders, right? So in Bangalore, it's still under debate, but I think this is something which is happening over the next few years. But what we are seeing now is that people are starting to adopt EVs. 2 years back, it were probably 1 or 2 people in each of the apartments we surveyed. Now it's more than 10, 12, 15. And over the next 2 to 3 years, we'll probably be seeing about 30, 40, 50 EV chargers, EV basically vehicles in a decently sized 1,000 apartment complex, right? So what we are doing is we are trying to solve it at various stages. So if you have a EV adoption where you have a single bike, we can solve that. Where you have tens of bikes, we can solve that. And we also basically help you figure out a way in which when there are 100% of your vehicles or bikes in electric, what infrastructure you have to create to basically support that framework. So these are some of the articles which basically says where most of the charging is happening and where most of the people are also charging. And these are not data by us. This is data by Tata Power. There are Ather, there is Ola. All of them have seconded our basically initial thought process and our own goal also, that most of the people will be charging at their homes and offices. And I'll show you through graphs over the course of the slide that how the pattern is and where people are charging their vehicles also. Right. So currently what we have done is we have basically installed about 30,000 odd charging points all across India. In Bangalore also we are one of the largest charging networks. And we enable anybody to set up their own infrastructure as well as infrastructure for community, whether it is an apartment, whether it is a newly constructed house or a tech park. We enable everybody to do it for themselves and for their communities. Right. So let me take you through the basics of EV charging, because most of us might not also understand how can we, where before we were going and filling up petrol, why is it required that we also need to have a charging infrastructure at home? So if you look at the types of vehicle, we have two-wheelers, we have three-wheelers, which might not be reflected in current basically in the audience we have, but we also have four-wheelers, right? So each of these have different types of infrastructure which needs to be created. And what we are doing is we are creating this infrastructure for the entirety of apartment and for the entirety of offices, right? So if you have about 10 vehicles, you'll probably need about 5 to 10 charging points to basically make sure that all of these vehicles are enabled to charge and park, right? Similarly, seeing all that infrastructure, what we have seen over the years is that there is an adoption of electric vehicles in the apartments and societies where we have deployed charging points, or where the apartment or society have deployed charging points, right? So these are some of the basically types of vehicles along with the type of chargers which are required to basically enable them to charge, right? So this is what I was talking about. This is our heat map currently. This is actual energy dispensed all over India. As you can see, most of the places we have covered, especially in the south, we have pretty good network. And if you look at the energy utilization rate on the right chart, you will find that the energy utilization is kind of growing exponentially. And thanks to the people and the committees like yourself participating in this network and building it out not only for yourself but your community, right? So this is a heat map of the Bangalore region, and this shows our presence in Bangalore in all of the apartments, offices, and other places like basically shops and hotels and restaurants, right? So if you look at it, this is a graph which shows how basically important it is to have a charging basically infrastructure at your residency, because we have deployed across all of the places, and if you look at the places which has the most utilization, it's the residency, it's the apartments, because that is where most of the people stay for most of the time, right? And it's the most convenient place. Just like your smartphone, which you plug it to the bedside lamp, right next to your to the plug which is right next to your bed. I think most of us will be charging at our own parking lots, and we are just creating the infrastructure to reach there. And this graph also shows what it will take for when everybody is basically getting going electric, what it will take for the apartment in terms of the grid and the infrastructure upgrade. Because as you can see here, it shows the distribution of where when the charging is happening, how the energy flow is happening across the day across the day. Right? So if you look at it, we are seeing peaks early in the morning, and we are seeing the second peak which is late into the night when most of us come back, right? So that means our system and our infrastructure which we are building out today has to be capable of handling the surge which is going to come when everybody comes back home from their offices and plug in their bikes or cars to charge, right? So this is what we basically help you achieve essentially when we build this infrastructure out in your apartment or in your office, right? So let me show you some case studies of how we started, how we enable apartments at various stages, right? And we also are now enabling builders and tech parks. So here we will show you two use cases. One is in Chennai, one is in Bangalore. And here we started about 3-4 years back by deploying a single or two charging points. And then we saw a lot of their customers over the last few years starting to buy electric vehicles, right? Because there was charging facility which was deployed there, and it was very convenient for them to come and use, right? So we started with 3, 4, 5 charging points initially over the last 2 years, and now we have and that is what we do when basically we onboard any apartment. This is what we have done in Old Madras Road in Bangalore, and this was done about 2 years back when we deployed 3 charging points in that particular apartment. But what is increasingly happening is that we are starting to work with builders so that this facility is built into the apartment before handover happens. And in case of this location with Shobha developers, we have installed out of the 1284 basically different flats they have sold, they have installed 321 charging points, which will scale up to include all of the parking lots in this apartment to have charging points, right? So what we are also enabling is for the builders and for societies to plan for long term. When you have 20, 30, 50, 100% EV adoption, you would need a charging point at every parking lot. And that is what we provide. Of course, for the existing apartment, it has to be retrofitment, it has to be civil work and electrical work. But for the newer buildings, we are making sure that this infrastructure already exists for anybody who wants to buy electric vehicles, right? And there are other basically opportunities where we go and we kind of deploy our infrastructure. This is tech parks in Bangalore. We have about, I think about 200 odd tech parks across Bangalore who we work with. We have deployed infrastructure. In case of apartments, we have, I think, reached about 1,000 apartments in Bangalore, and we have more than 2,100 apartments across India where we have deployed infrastructure and people are using them. And these are some of the corporate and basically residential deployments we have done over the last few years since we have been in operation in charging deployment space. And again, some pictures to kind of across cities about what our capabilities are and what is required actually to basically enable the communities where you have been basically working with to kind of enable them to have charging at their home or at their residences, right? So how it takes shape is currently apartment comes and they say that we want to try out 1 or 2 or 5 charging points initially, and then when the EV adoption goes higher, they procure another 10, 20, 30 chargers and kind of start deploying, right? And with the builders, what we are doing is we are basically enabling them to have a charging point at every parking lot before the handover happens. And thanks to a few states, now there are mandates to basically do that. Otherwise, there is a lot of problem in getting the occupancy certificate. So these are some of the building bylaws and some basically notifications which we have gotten from central and the state government. I can basically share the link of these files and all so that you can have a look at it for basically which are mandating or are giving a nudge in the direction as to what is going to come in the next few years. Because the government and Niti Aayog is kind of bullish on making sure that India is adopting to EV standards and EV adoption is rising up. And we are also a good manufacturer and exporter of the same electric vehicles, right? So thank you for basically taking time out and hearing me out. Any questions you have, I will be loving. Yeah, sure.
In older apartments which are already constructed,
Yeah.
how difficult is it to install an EV charging point in the basement at their parking?
Yeah, so it's not that difficult actually. You have to get an electrician and do it. It typically costs you about depends on the length of the wire you draw, between 10 to maybe 40,000. And if you're having a car, it might go up to 1 lakh also. The problem is basically the load sanctioned. Most of us in apartment have 3 kVA or 5 kVA. If you buy a Tata Nexon, the newer one, or a MG, a car, you that draws 7 kilowatt power, you cannot charge at your home. So you need some shared facilities as well as probably provide infrastructure which can basically enable anybody to have parking and charging in their own parking lot. So if you do it individually, it might cost you somewhere to the tune of 10,000 rupees to 1.5 lakh if you want to upgrade get the BESCOM connection and stuff. But what we are working with specifically in some builders right now, where we have deployed, is that we have taken a common parking common connection, and that we have connected with the EV parking tariff, which gives you a unit rate of 5 rupees, not 8 or 10 rupees, which you might be paying for your home also, which is cheaper, because the government is kind of promoting it. And the end customer gets a wire to his own parking lot, and everybody at any point of time can get a wire directly to their parking lot.
So today existing apartment associations can get wireless charging for all their car parks?
No,
That is doable. Is that doable?
That is doable, but it will
Provided you
require.
increase the power.
You have to probably, if you ask me, I don't have the exact figure for the existing apartment, but every apartment would have to invest between 10 to 20,000 rupees per flat to basically get that facility into the apartment, into each and every parking lot.
You also spoke of the lower tariff EV
Yeah.
charge. So could you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah, so in case it is done properly, again, with the builder or directly with the RWA for everybody, there is a way in which you can directly procure power at very cheaper rates, which the government is promoting at 5 rupees. And you can basically kind of share it with your basically community, right? Currently, unfortunately, most of the pre-built apartments do not have that. And this particular thing is called EV tariff meter. So if you want to get that, it takes some time, of course. All of you are more experienced than me on that. But we have done it successfully in a few plots, in a few apartments already, and also in highways and other places where we deploy charging points, we take those meters, right?
So for this EV tariff,
Yeah.
I'm asking questions on behalf of the audience because
Yeah, sure.
we know that there's a lot of interest in this.
Yes.
So what would be your participation in that, or any other EV charging station provider? And what are the steps, or what should an MC member be aware of?
Okay, so first of all, we should have a plan essentially as a MC that, okay, this year we need like 1 or 10 charging points. based on the size of society and your current EV adoption. Next year we'll have this much, and the graph essentially you can see. So you can plan it out for the next 4 or 5 years in a way that you have something to give today, and you don't have to invest so much upfront capex essentially on top of it. But of course, you have to plan it out for the next 5 years because the EV adoption is coming. It is there almost like you'd speak to any of yours, basically younger crowd who's possibly out in the market buying for, or looking for a car or a two-wheeler. Most of them will basically get a electric two-wheeler right now, right? So the thing is, we have to plan it out much better. We have to start with a small sample set right now, maybe 5-10 chargers, and that is what we have done, and gradually scale it up to 10-20-50% as the EV adoption picks up. And that is around, I think, 20-25% when you see the adoption in your community. That is the point of time you should go for EV meters, because it is a expense actually item, and we have to sit with the BESCOM and do it, unless and until it is done already with the builders, in the case of the buildings where we are already providing the infrastructure.
I mean, you're thinking like a startup founder, talking about what happens in total capex and growing the graph, right?
Yeah.
But for associations who are about to take over or who have taken over,
Yeah.
then what is the investment, and what is your participation or anybody else's participation in helping getting this done?
Okay, so people who have already taken over, we can obviously we can get connected. We can basically help you with the solutions. We would encourage you to start small, maybe deploy 5 to 10 charging points, like the apartments which I showed you, and then we will take care of all the infrastructure, the installation, and we charge you for all of the services and stuff, and we basically make sure that the infrastructure is ready for your community at the current basically EV adoption rates. As and when the EV adoption goes higher, we monitor the data, of course, and we come back to you, or you yourself can reach out to us at any point of time, and we will start building more and more infrastructure in your apartment. Whether you start with a 5 or 10 charging point right now as we speak, and then you probably add another 10, 20, 30 charging points in the next few years.
Is this on a subscription basis or is this on a purchase?
So
per
there is
install?
a purchase basis right now only. Initially we were doing the subscription and everything, and in fact we deployed a lot of chargers for free also. Yes.
Sorry, I just have one point to make for every association. So the point that he's trying to make, if you don't have common area car park retained by you as an association, then the implementation that he's saying becomes very difficult. Imagine one day if the builder has sold all your car parks, then how are you going to install EVs? So it's important. Yeah, exactly. So it's important to take stock of your car parks.
My apologies right at the outset if I flip the card for you.
Sure.
I would like to ask a question. What is the biggest threat the EV today faces? And what are the threats, legal and otherwise, the apartments will face when we implement them? Case in point, I can give you 3-4 examples of high-profile cases which has happened across Bangalore. And what are the implications of that when we implement EV in our apartment complexes?
So off the top of my mind, thanks for that question actually. Off the top of my mind, let me, like I think the elephant in the room, coming back to that, is basically EVs catching fire, right? So that means that all of the, like what is happening even in my own society, my own parking, what has happened is that the apartment did not want to take this position of putting common charging points initially, right? We had to do a lot of stuff to move that, but then they allowed people to basically draw wires and put, and that's how I also get charging. But if it's not done in a proper way, whatever number of instances of fire and all those things you are seeing, it would basically double, triple, or go 10x from where we are right now. Because just imagine everybody drawing wire from their meter to basically their own parking lot, and everybody doing it with different basically person, and all of that is basically happening at a common area, which I think is owned by the RWAs. And if the planning and this thing is not done, we will see a lot of unfortunate incidents. It's just bound to happen with the current basically policy and whatever we have. But that is the exact pain point we want to address. We want you to think about it. We want you to kind of plan it out and basically deploy your resources and your policies also in apartment for charging or for parking or whatever around that. For places where we deploy in community parking or in enterprises, we take insurance and stuff. And of course, we do audits of our site and installations. But again, that is the exact point which I was trying to address, is that as and when people start adopting EVs, you will not have enough space in common parking lots to charge the EVs, because they typically take overnight to charge each of these EVs, right? And if you say if even if there is fast charging available, would you go up 1 hour, 2 hours down the line, you'll come back down and remove your car because somebody else will be waiting to charge? So that is a real life problem we have seen. We have deployed fast chargers also, slow chargers also. We see the most convenient way is to basically put it in your own parking lot and charge, but the infrastructure to get that power, the last mile delivery of electrons is actually the term we use technically. That has to be basically planned really, really well. So the threshold for all of these conversations to move forward, because there will be some investment in infrastructure upgrade essentially, might be around the 20-30% adoption mark of EVs in your apartment. That's when you will have enough sizable people willing to pay for basically infrastructure upgrade, and rest of the people will be convinced to pay also, because they can see that the EV is coming and they have to upgrade infrastructure. Just like let's say putting gas pipeline rather than taking gas cylinders, you can retrofit it in your apartments. It is going to be some kind of cost, but it is going to happen when 20-30% of the people are actually using those products, and there is an adoption curve which has happened. Does that answer your question, sir? Okay, I'll sit with you after this.
Okay, compliance questions. We talked about tariff rates being different. I also get input that all residential properties cannot be used for commercial purposes. When we do EV charging either through you or not, is that a commercial activity? Can we do it in residential properties?
Yes, so this is actually semi-public property. There is a guideline on this issued by the government already, because this was the exact problem, and I am sure you might have seen some posts of people taking their bike with the lift into in the elevator to their flat. So the thing is, the government has basically now provided a notification on this. So this is actually semi-public charging, where you have common meters, common charging spaces where people can come and charge from your own apartment essentially. So it's categorized as a commercial activity, but it is allowed by law right now.
Okay. Second compliance question. Today the tariffs are 2, 3. Tomorrow it could be any. Would you suggest looking forward to have separate supply and metering for EVs, so that whichever way this goes, either it becomes residential or commercial or whichever way it goes, we are able to adapt to it?
Yes, so that is something we do for builders specifically. When we build this infrastructure into the building, we take a separate connection. So today it is EV tariff. Tomorrow it can be direct power purchasing agreement if the load goes beyond 100 kilowatt. I think that's something which the government has done legislation wise. We can directly feed you power from solar power plant or wind essentially, directly purchasing that, of course, but that will come with some demand essentially. If the demand is there, then we will do that. But the infrastructure has to be built into the building for this.
Last compliance question. Those who set up their Jugaad connection, it's illegal. can as an association remove all those which are not
It's
in
not
compliance?
illegal, unfortunately. It's a gray area till now. It has a lot of safety and other concerns. Gray area, but not illegal.
Gray area, but also not legal.
Not illegal. Unfortunately, every department has been passing notifications since the government is moving towards EVs, and these are some of the queries we also get from all of the apartment members we work with, where we have deployed our charging points. They say, can we remove the private parking and charging facilities? The government has basically not said anything till now. It is that one notification says that you can draw actually wire from your meter, because I think the rule says that you can't take wire outside your home, right? But there is a notification which basically says that you can take it out for EV charging. So that is why there is some kind of gray area in this particular space.
Yeah, see, my question is, this will become the additional electrical load on the entire system.
Yes.
Okay. So, it has to start from the developer. Okay,
Yes.
means the sanction has to be taken.
Yes.
Okay, maybe forecasting some maybe 20%,
Yes.
30% load
Yes.
will be increased.
Yes.
No builder will build that. Okay,
Yes.
and also there is a BESCOM, there is a maximum demand. So
Yes.
they will put maximum demand charges also.
Yeah.
So from the beginning itself, you have to take that sanction, and then maximum demand will be built also. So these are all the factors to be considered.
These are the factors to be considered, but there is a point to start also. Tomorrow, we will wake up and we will not suddenly find EVs everywhere. We will still be where we are. But we will see that tens of thousands of users buying EV this month itself, right? Maybe 100,000, the current number. So this is going to be a transition period. That is when we will have all these corner cases. We have to initially start, that's what I was saying, and in our deployments, you have to start somewhere and you have to have a path to basically reach there over the next 5-10 years, right? So start small. Is our basically submission also, that you have to start with small scale deployment, maybe 5-10 charging points, and then scale it up based on how many users are coming and how the load is getting higher. We can also, if you start small but with a plan and a transition plan to have all of this, then we know at what point of time we have to take additional load, and at what point of time what kind of load. We cannot basically upgrade the road right from day zero, right? We have to have a plan in mind and basically do that. In fact, in one of the in one of the basically links, we have made a white paper as to with MyGate, which also deals with RWAs, to kind of basically give you a handbook to help you plan this transition over the next 5-10 years, actually. What should happen today vis-a-vis what is going to happen maybe 2 years, vis-a-vis what is going to happen in 5 years. Of course, when we work with the builders, all of this is addressed already, but those are the new built properties, right?
How is the engagement model different between what you do with builders and what you do with RWAs?
So with builders, okay, so they can say that EV charging is an amenity now in all of their flats.
And probably you're giving it free to them.
No, we are not giving it free to
Okay.
them. We charge them the money, and they built it into the cost of the flat. But if you look at the cost of the flat, which is probably about a few crores, and you look at a 10-20,000 rupees investment, because for him it is very cheap to make this
No,
infrastructure.
see, I'm not talking as Aditya Rao of Green TVT, I'm talking about Aditya Rao, the apartment dweller.
Yes.
And as an apartment dweller, I'm very uncomfortable with anyone in the ecosystem who works with builders. So how are you going to overcome that mindset issue that most of my fellow apartment dwellers will have?
So think of us like basically, let's say the LPG provider, okay? So we work with the builder so that the infrastructure is ready when you move in. And how much of the energy you use, that is what we settle with you directly, right? So when I work with that builder, the infrastructure cost is already built into the apartment which you are buying, right? But the energy your car is going to charge or your bike is going to charge, that you have to settle with me. And I have basically made sure that the infrastructure is upgraded. There are certifications to it as per the government regulation.
So, just like the airlines reserve parking slots, you've reserved the charging points with the builder. And when the user wants to use it, he has to come back to you. He's tied to you because you have occupied that slot
No, there
for
is
you
a
to activate it.
you have to activate it, but there is a
You
new
have to activate it,
you
yes.
have to activate it, but then there is a new white paper again which the government is in consultation with, which is UEI, which is just like UPI but for energy transfers, which is again in white paper but a policy framework which is coming, in which you can directly pay through phone pay, WhatsApp, whatever.
So when you work with the builders, do you give the entire infrastructure or only you put your bolt box there and when the user comes, he has to pay for everything that is inside?
No. So the cost is something which we have already recovered. If you don't have to pay, if you are directly connected to the let's say to your own meter, then you don't have to pay anything. You run it in your private mode. You will not have benefit of green metering, or you want to get solar power. All of that will not be there. And if in case there is your own house has limit 3 kilowatt, 5 kilowatt, if you go beyond it, you have to pay the penalty. In case of us, when we are doing it, we are maintaining it at a community level later when the handover happens, right? So we can basically directly go and get the EV meter, give you cheaper rates, even with our margins included, right, for running that infrastructure and operating it. And later, we can go to solar or other power forms to basically make sure that the energy you are drawing for your EVs are also green. But that is what basically is difference when we are directly working with builder. And so think of us as a B2C model of delivery, because we deployed all these charging points, and that is when most of the apartments also had these feedback that now we have people directly going and doing the jugaad and stuff, because they want the most convenient form. I don't want to go out in the night and take out my car or bike because my car and bike is parked and somebody else has to come and charge, right? So that is when we had to redevelop our model as to where should we target in terms of infrastructure deployment, because this is an infrastructure just like your gas, your electricity, your water, which you get in your apartment. And if it is not thought through and not planned out, then basically there will be some problem, like what most of the apartments will face in the next few years when the EV adoption actually starts picking up.
Yeah, so continuing with that, what do you think would be the future? Would there be something similar to a gas point at every parking lot, or is there going to be built into the infrastructure? Is that going to be another component a person can choose? How do you think it's going to go ahead?
So we think like every parking lot will have a charging point at some point of time. At least the infrastructure to get the electricity there would have to be there, built in. Now you can choose that, okay, I will get Bolt or XYZ charging point at that point of time, but the settlement mechanism and everything is something which the government has still not thought through. It is just that we have been engaged in this industry for 4 years, so we have thought through a lot of the problems and working with the right stakeholder, that you get the infrastructure built into your system. Like you were correctly pointing out, STP, if it's not there, some problem, what will you do when at the handover stage? So we basically go and certify that this is there and this is a EV charging point based on the government certified standards, and it's handed over to you. Now you can choose to draw power from your own park, this thing, and not give us anything. It's fine, but there I am sure there will be people where they would need cheaper power or green power, right? So that is what that's the infrastructure we have built.
Yeah, I have one question. I think it's got to do with legal. We were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
In a lot of cases, our parking is in the basement, first basement, second basement. So what is the kind of laws that exist for when you have basement, sorry, I was just concerned. Basement parking, and there is a sprinkler, because for every parking you need to have a sprinkler, but if there's a charging point, then there is electricity. Water and electricity don't really mix. So what is the...
So we work with the architectures, we work with IGBC, we work with CREDAI, and we have, I think, proud to say that we work with about 150 builders across India now. Of course, that number has to be very higher, but we work with the likes of Shobha Brigade. So we influence them at the decision-making plan, at the design plan, what they have to do changes to make sure that this is accommodated for, essentially. And that is, I think, some of the learnings which we have had by dealing with real people, actually charging and trying to solve the problems which you are going to face.
Just to add on to his point, what Prakash has said, this is going only for the builders who are developing it. But
Yes.
what about the existing people who have basements? There's a huge risk because you are parking your cars along with the petrol cars and other things. So once there's the risk is so high. So that is where it's a people take a step back. The RWs take a step back. Because when you have 100 cars in the basement and you have sprinklers, but one catches fire, is a rapid catch fire in all of the places. How do we deal with that situation? But for a new builder, you have said your point is right. But where do we come here in that adjustment point?
So that is where I was coming back, that you start with a place where you can deploy 5-10 charging points. Today, I think that is available in any society which has more than 500 flats, right? You have some visitor parking, you start there. And then over time, you have to modify your infrastructure, essentially, just like you do with your, I saw the pitch of the gardening company. You keep on changing, you have new facilities, new infrastructure, you have to change those basically sprinklers, the position it differently, use certified products for charging and do the installation and the basically certification by a trusted company, essentially, right? Because this is going to come, whether today, tomorrow, 2 years down the line, 5 years down the line, there will be people who would be buying EVs and using it, and they would force all of us to think that why can't I charge at my own parking lot? Because that's the most convenient place. I have been charging for my entire life in my parking lot. Why can't I do that? So that is the basically other way around, essentially. And when I am thinking about it, and when we basically design our solutions, we take into account all of this. And when we install also, we do a lot of site checks, certifications of the site also, essentially. How do we have to deploy? Like, which product should we deploy? Whether it is outside, whether it is inside, whether there is a water source nearby or not. So all of that basically we do. And we see that there are a lot of basically people who have done kind of jugaad, essentially, borrowing his word. But I think some of those, as in most of the solutions, are actually not very safe. And those are some of the incidents we see on and read about currently, right? So that is where our basically company kind of comes in and helps you kind of chart that path out for 1 year, for 2 years, for 5 years, essentially.
I would like to call Rachna to hand over a sapling to Mr. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you.